Wow. You are in for an absolute treat with this episode of the podcast. Chico comes on and I've worked with Chico for over 3 years and he shared things in this podcast that I had no idea about, and it just shows you sometimes you don't really know what's going on in someone's or what's happened in someone's life. And Chico is such a great guy. Like, he's always got a smile on his face. But it's been an absolute honour for me to have him on the podcast and just share his story, which is going to inspire so many people listening to this podcast. And it's all gonna hit you, because it's an unbelievable story, life journey that Chico's been on. Like, the dark times of depression, 2 suicide attempts, not speaking until he was 4 years old. Like, he didn't see daylight for 2.5 years. His first 2.5 years was like very badly treated from like a baby, and then like lots of drug stories, and now look at what he's doing. He's like motivating so many people on a different path now, and it's so motivational, so inspiring, and so great to see Chico go from being where he was to where he is now, and the path he's been on, the development, and the person that he's grown to become, and it's just incredible. So without further ado, I'm not going to go on anymore. Just listen to this podcast. Like, if you have to, spread it throughout the week. But yeah, thanks Chico for coming on, and I think you all definitely need to check him out on socials. I'll tag his stuff in the comments below. But yeah, enjoy, guys. This is the Be More podcast. I am your host, Jack Williams, and this is a show all about health, nutrition, mindset, and performing at our very best. And this is going to be your catalyst to being more. Welcome to the latest episode of the Be More podcast. Today I'm joined by a man who I've worked with for a few years now, and I'm very excited for this podcast because he's told me a few things in a recent training session. And not only has Chico gone through like a massive career progression over the last, 5 years?
Yeah, I'd say that.
But it's been more of a mental journey as well that's been incredible, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's been challenging in a good way. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So to give the listeners some context, we're going to do the 1 minute question. So sum up your life in 1 minute, mate.
Okay, so I'll try my best. I was raised by my uncle and auntie because of my parents being addicted to drugs in the past. I moved to England in 2005 in chase of a girlfriend. I started working in the kitchen, and then I started finding I was not happy with what I was doing. Then my wife now helped me to find my career now, my passion. So that's where I come from. I work at the Pure Gym at the moment, as you know, Commercial Road, which finally I find something that truly makes me happy because I'm able to help other people, and that's where I come from.
Unbelievable. So you literally come over here from Portugal to find a girlfriend?
No, I was already going out with her back in Portugal. She's half English, half Portuguese.
Oh, okay.
And then she moved to England to go to college, and I was just turning 20. And I thought, what? There's nothing here at the moment, apart from bad stuff. Let's move to somewhere else where I can start fresh, so I can learn something new in life. Because here is nothing challenging me at all. Back then I already knew that.
So was that the start of change for you, or when you came here was there still problems?
There were still massive problems. Life was still going. I still had depression by the time I still moved to England. I was still dealing with a lot of issues. I was not talking to my biological parents at that time. I was still lost, let's put it that way. But I knew I was on a good path somehow. Yeah.
So let's start back from the beginning then. So what happened? Why were you living with your uncle and auntie?
Okay, so as I said in the beginning, my parents were addicted to drugs before I was born, and after I was born. I spent 2.5 years once I was born, spent in a dark house with barely any food, no sunlight, no human contact, as my parents were never present. My parents, well, I call them uncle and auntie to today's day, they used to go there every other 2 weeks or whatever it might be to give me some food, which was most of the time never reached to my mouth. And so 2.5 years after, they felt forced to break into the door and get me out of there. This is just a lot more quicker than expected.
So you were 2.5 when they took you from
yes.
your biological parents?
To be honest, if I want to be honest with you, it was more like at the time. So I'm 32 at the moment. When I was a baby, men normally who decides things.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So my dad, with not being with my mum, he didn't know what to do. Also, still addicted to drugs and stuff like that. So he couldn't sustain me. So my auntie told me, just bring him over. And he goes, I don't have any money. And she's like, doesn't matter. And he goes, what about uncle? So it always depends on a man. At that time, it was all about men that make the decisions.
Yeah.
You know. So she said, doesn't matter, just bring him. I'll pay the taxi when you get here. So he did. And that's the last thing I remember. That's the only thing I ever remember is the lights of the city when I was leaving it to go to my uncle's and auntie's house.
And how old were you then?
I was 2.5 years old.
You remember it?
Like it was yesterday. I can never. There's one thing I can never forget about it. Is the day is me sitting in the back of the taxi on the left side, looking at the lights of the city I was about to leave, which is where I was born.
I've got goosebumps.
Crazy.
And then your uncle and auntie looked after you. They brought you up.
Yeah. It's crazy how life turns you around. So my auntie immediately went against my uncle without asking him first. So my dad brought me there, and my dad apparently being so worried, he goes, if you don't want them, we can always give them to an English couple. And she was like, don't be mad. It's your son. I'll look after him until you're well enough. And that was it.
So this is obviously her brother, right? And then...
No, that's the thing. My uncle is my dad's uncle.
Oh, okay.
So which my dad's mum, he's her brother. So to me, he's not even anything. Do you know what I mean? He's a second degree uncle, let's put it that way.
And they looked after you until you were how old?
Till I was 20. Well, to be honest, they still look after me. Whenever things go bad, they're always there for me.
And they live in Portugal still?
They still live in Portugal, yes.
So is that where you went on holiday recently?
Yes, yeah.
And you're still really close to them?
Like...
Are they your parents?
They are my parents. And that's what I did psychologically. That's what I did. If I call my uncle and auntie, mum and dad, it's putting... in my conscience is putting them in the same level as my biological. So I decided naturally to call them uncle and auntie as the definition of parents, because in my definition, did a parent do things unconditionally, when my biological parents, it has to be something in return. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. So they obviously didn't have problems with drugs or anything. They brought you up pretty well in a different city in Portugal?
Yes, in a village. In a very small village, about an hour away from here. Yeah.
And then, obviously, you had a really good upbringing with them?
Definitely, yeah. Well, my auntie, she was a chef for 40 years. My uncle worked in a hospital. Obviously, he worked overnight and stuff like that, so worked more than a distance. And they didn't have much money. But one thing, a valuable lesson they've always told me is that you always got to be willing to help others without wanting anything in return, regardless of the situation. Never lie to anyone to just get something from it. So I've always known that lesson to look after others, even so that you probably know that you're going to get anything back from them, which essentially over the years I've learned that's what's going to make me happy, because I am helping someone regardless if I'm going to get anything back or not.
Yeah.
And that's the lessons I've always learned from my parents.
Well, that's a great lesson for everyone listening to this podcast to take straight away, isn't it? And then we're just getting started. I think you're going to go deeper into your story and give so many golden nuggets that people can learn from, especially because a lot of the podcast listeners are younger than me. So they're younger than both of us. So this is advice for them that you probably wish you could have heard when you were growing up, right? So.
Oh wow, yeah.
So obviously you were brought up pretty well by your
uncle and auntie, yeah.
And then, but despite how good they brought you up, did the first 2.5 in your life, years in your life, did they affect you a little bit?
Affected me a bit. Affected me massively, I would say, because of those 2.5 years, I created a lot of health issues. So because I spent a lot of time closed in the house, I didn't get to see much light. So my vision was messed up. So I had to go into doctors because of eye problems. Because I didn't eat as much, I always refer this way. When you see kids in Africa and got a big belly, that's what I had. So I had gut health issues, digestive issues, breathing issues, talking issues. I didn't talk way later. The first time I've ever spoke, I was 4 years old.
You didn't speak till you were 4?
I couldn't. I was starting from the beginning. So my life only started really when I was 2.5 years old. Not anything from that was nothing. I didn't have no contact with humans. I didn't have no contact with light, sunlight, or food. Barely any food at all. I was literally the smallest kid I've imagined, with a big belly. Right. So the doctors back then had to told my parents that the only way it would help me to improve my health, obviously, is a high quality, solid diet, of course. Then I had to spend as much time as possible by the sea. So my childhood was spent by the water. The doctor said that the winds and the smell from the sea would help me to recover and become stronger as immune system. And that's what I did. That's what my parents did. They always spend most of my time on the beach.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And then, next point in the story. I'm captured, mate. Keep talking, don't stop. So then as I started growing up, I went to school, I always got into trouble. I was always been a guy that if it's a school and you always have a guy that's always causing trouble and that kind of stuff, I was the one. Right from the early age. First thing I've ever, I know it doesn't seem that bad now, but if you're thinking you're a kid, when I went to primary school, my first school, we went to be shown the school, and my first instinct is to do something that will cause a problem. So I grabbed my best friend, which is still today's day my best friend. I grabbed his hat and I threw over to the school, which it was not open yet, which it was a present from his mum, which I found out way later. So I was always looking for trouble. When I went to other school, year 1, 2, 3 and 4, I was always looking for trouble. So I would get in trouble in class so I could get out, so I could plan something to harm someone else. So it was not by occasion, I planned it. So one of the situations I've always told very close friends of mine, everything I did, normally when I was about year 2, that's it. The teacher used to have 2 golden fish, and so I needed to find a way of being punished so I could be taken to the kitchen, which now it makes sense because in the kitchen my mum was the chef in that school. And so I did. I went to the tank, I grabbed the 2 fish, opened the window, called the teacher, threw the fish out of the window. So she felt forced to take me to my auntie. So I did. So the teacher took me there, went to the kitchen, and I started planning because the break hasn't happened yet. So I need to plan something to harm someone. Why? I never get to understand why I was always looking to do it. So what I did at a school, which is very poor school, it forms puddles in the winter. But it hasn't rained yet, so what I did, I dug a hole by just the exit where the kids will run into the playground. And by the time they'll come out, it'll probably rain. Luckily, well, not luckily, but by the time it came, it rained and the puddle was full. So the kids couldn't see the hole in there. So a little girl comes in their wellies, running and jumps into the puddle, as kids do. And guess what? She was neck deep into the water. So what I'm trying to say is I've always looked for ways of creating trouble all throughout my years. But as I get older, I'm going to do harder troubles.
I start getting to hang out with bad people, bad influences. So at age of 13, I smoked my first spliff, my first weed, and then not long after I started selling it, and this is age of 13. So and this looking like way back now it was me trying to distract myself for the real issue, which I was carrying over from my parents, not being present in my life at all. So I always got myself in trouble, always never cared about school, always only worry about school when it comes the last semester, and always just about pass it, never with great grades. So I've never been like academically smart or anything like that. But I've always had something in me that I could never figure out. Something that was tormenting me all these years, that I needed something to distract me. So I really got into sports. And that was the thing that always kept me busy, because I've always become really good at it really quickly, but also become bored very quickly. So I had to change it constantly. So now looking back is to not to get myself in trouble. So I spend, all my childhood, my teenagers, playing football, basketball, tennis, whatever the sport it comes, I'll put my hands on it, and I'll stick to it. I'll get into teams. I'll become, I would say not the best, but I'll become good at it. Then I'll move on. And in between that, it's always the problem. It's like I'll be really good when I'm in a sport, but then when I get bored of that sport, and the period between that sport and the next one, that's when things go wrong. And so it did. So I went from just doing drugs, selling them. I start stealing now. Start stealing mopeds, breaking into cars, doing things like this. And I spent doing that till, I'd say probably age of 16. And then I carry on doing drugs. I never stopped, but I just got more involved and more deep into people that are dealing drugs. Start hanging with them, get myself into troubles, robbing shops, doing all this kind of stuff. Always got myself neck deep, but never got into trouble somehow. But I never figured out, why am I doing this kind of stuff? Why I have this urge of doing such things, and I never moved on to do better things in life. So I always got myself lost. So also at age of, I think it was 8, I was diagnosed with deep depression. So I started taking medication for depression. And I find that very quickly that was like, I become like an empty shell. That always with a smile on the face, but very, very dark inside. And I did that for so many years, and I had to stop. But then again, I get myself in trouble again. As long as I'm not in control, taken by control by someone, I'll get myself in trouble, no matter what. So I was always being lost.
So you were taking medication for depression when you was 8 years old?
Yes, yeah.
And when did you stop?
I stopped, I would say, I was about 17, almost 18. It was about that. That was when, going there, that's when I start seeing the girl the reason why I moved to England. So then I stopped. So kind of I had someone to pull me back and kind of guide me through a better path. And then that's why I came to England.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to mention before we move on to England now that happened when you were younger?
Well, I'm just going to go really quick in this one. And so I've always got, when I was young, always got told what happened, who my parents were, and where they were, and what possibly they were doing. Very quickly, when I was young, my uncle and auntie went to court to get my custody, and my biological parents never appeared. So obviously my uncle and auntie got my custody, so everything was good. They always tell me how my parents were, and I always got disappointed because the truth always hurts, regardless what the circumstances.
Yeah.
It's always bad. So, it always hurt me, and I think it made me more angry throughout the years. And I've always held to that anger because for some reason I had to be proud of that some reason had to hold to something, because I'm sure that any people that have gone into something not or the same, but as something that has been detrimental to them, it's a lot easier to stick to something that you're already living than moving to something new that very possibly will be positive to your life. So I've always stuck to anger as a reason for what I was doing, and drugs to hide away or to get away from the reality, as you say. So I've always had all those. Now looking back, it's always my two enemies, but back then it was my two friends that I thought I could always trust on them. So I've always carried on that till I came to England.
And what did your uncle and auntie think when you were doing that stuff?
Well, I never let them to know. I've
know?
always hidden from them.
They
never find out, because school problems at school, obviously they get told, because every day they get called at school for the troubles I'm making. But outside of that, they're stealing and hanging out with the wrong people. They always thought I was hanging with a group of friends. They were a good group of friends. They never knew I was getting way further away from the village, and I was doing all sorts of things and getting all sorts of troubles that only got me more angry, more depressed, and more unhappy to what I was going with, until I came to England, because I decided that I needed to do something completely different. I needed to get myself out of the comfort zone and get something brand new, even so I couldn't speak a word of English.
You didn't know English? No
English at all. As I said, I was a dropout in school. I never cared about education, apart from sports, obviously. So English was, obviously, as everyone when it learns languages, the swearing words and all this kind of stuff. But I had no English whatsoever. I had the will to change my life. I knew.
Where did that will come from?
From my auntie, I would say. My auntie has been a pillar in my life, where it always held me together as a legacy that I should follow, regardless the circumstances of my life. So I had always that good lesson that should always think and see the positive in things in life, and always try to drive towards it, even so is something that you don't know at all. You might fail, you might succeed, but she always give it a chance. If it fails, it fails. If it succeeds, move on and create something even better than that. And that's what I did. Even knew that back then, I didn't know that coming here would completely twist my life around. I did it. Not knowing anything from this country. Only knowing one person.
And was it your girlfriend who wanted to come, or you both wanted to come?
We always spoke about if she actually eventually moved to here, I would have done that for her.
Yeah.
As a teenager, you wouldn't think that would ever come to it. But
how old was you when you came 18?
No, I just turned 20. Literally, I turned 20. But I've always been the man of my word, and I've always told her that I would.
How long were you together for?
In Portugal we were together for a year, and then we were together for 2.5 years after we moved to England. Yeah.
And from the start here, were you on a good path, or obviously you said no before? So what happened when you got to England?
Well, when I got to England, I moved into her parents' house. I started doing whatever it got to me I could do without needing the language. But luckily, in their family, I had the Portuguese person that was working for the family, building swimming pools. So I thought, okay, cool, let's start somewhere. It might not be the best thing in the world, but let's do it. So I did it. That was my unofficial job first. I started building swimming pools, digging holes, whatever I could put my hands on. And I did that, if I'm not wrong, for a year. Then I started working in Nando's. That was my first official job.
When did you start learning English? From the minute you were here?
It's one of those things you're forced to learn it. You're here, and I had the willing. I want to stay here, so I want to do the best to fit in, not forcefully, but I want to let the Portuguese culture a little bit apart and open my mind to whatever it comes, but just always keep my eyes open to whatever is negative.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to learn the language?
I would say within the first 8 months, I was able to keep a conversation. Yeah. But obviously, we're always learning in life. So I'm still learning. But I'd say my English got quite good when I was 4 years. Because when I was a chef, all I did was working. You don't need to talk to anyone. All you do, you need to cook and put it in a plate.
So you were a chef at Nando's?
I was a chef at Nando's for 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
Is that when Nando's was like just coming out?
Yes, yeah. Oh, that was in 2009. No, sorry, apologies. That was in just beginning of 2006.
Did you start there when the restaurant first opened?
No. They were open already, I think 8 months, maybe probably more. I can't recall how long they've been open.
Nice. So then, from there, were you being a good boy or were you being a bad boy?
To be honest, I was being quite good. One thing I've always been good at doing is if I have a good reason to change, I'll do it. So from doing drugs, my ex-girlfriend at the time, she was teetotal, she didn't do no drugs and stuff like that, she didn't like it either. So I stopped. Mm-hmm. One day from another, didn't matter how hard it was, I would do it. I'll commit 100%. So I did it. I didn't drink. I was never been a drinker, I was more the drug side of things. So I stopped doing drugs, stopped, messing about, and I got focused in, now I need to work. And that's all I did. I got my mind busy in just doing that.
Nice.
But I always struggled with that because I've never been good at telling how I felt.
No, yeah.
So I was always been a closed man still. I would say I'm still learning about myself.
But so when you left Portugal, were you still selling drugs then?
I stopped because of her.
Oh, you stopped. So you stopped a year before you come here.
Yeah.
And then the 2.5 years you were here, you didn't do any drugs.
No, not at all. Completely stopped. No smoking, no drugs, no drinking, none of that.
And then you broke up.
And then we broke up 2.5 years after.
And what happened?
I went back to worse than I was before. I went through all sorts of drugs. I went back to selling again. I did that every day because when you're a chef, all you do is work. So with the spare time, I'll do is doing drugs, selling drugs.
And you're still at Nando's the whole time?
I was still at Nando's the whole time. Yeah.
Wow. And then how long did this go on for?
So
you're like 23 now, yeah?
Yeah, I'm 23. By that time, I'm already 23. So this went about 25, 26. So this is when I met my wife now.
So 3 years of
hard mayhem, like
battering your body, doing things you shouldn't be doing.
Not eating properly, I had no time. So at the time, now today's day, I'm 74 kilos. Back then I was 65. I was just working from early morning to late evening, come home, just drugs and hang out with people. Again, back to the old self, but doing harsher drugs and doing more than I was doing.
Every day?
Every day, all day, as long as I could.
Did you take drugs while you were at work?
Not always.
But you had done?
Yes, I've done. Luckily I never got caught, and gladly I didn't ever get into trouble to that, because looking back now, if I could go back in the past and see myself there, I would smack myself in the face, because I could lose everything. So then I went back to my angry old self, because I didn't have no one else to make me happy, no reason to be happy, nothing to hold me straight. So I went back to be angry and to hide away from the truly thing that was hurting me psychologically. Physically, obviously, if you eat a little bit less, you'll be skinny, this and that, and affect your health. But psychologically is what it stays the longest, and no matter where you go, it will be there, regardless what you try to do. I always try to put it away by doing drugs, thinking I'm gonna do this. That stopped me from thinking from the past and what my parents done to me, and so. And that worked for a period of time. Yeah, it does, of course it does, because you do stuff and you don't.
It's escapism.
Yeah, exactly. Your brain gets.
I've got a question. Did you know what was going on, or did you just think this is my life? Did you think depression was your life, and did you think that because of how you grew up, your first 2.5 years, that you were destined for this? Because obviously recently you've done more self-development.
Yes,
you've got a lot more self-aware. You've learned a lot in the last 5-6 years, right?
Yeah.
So do you think you've become aware that all these things were because of that reason in the most recent years, or do you think you knew it was going on the whole time and it was just your escapism?
I only found out that in recent years, because I've always tried to convince myself that's who I was. And as most people that suffer from depression, I'm sure they will agree with me. They think depression is something that will stick to you, and you're going to stick to medication for the rest of your life. And a lot of people think only people that they get away from depression, they've got to already be really strong mentally. That's not true. That's far from being the truth. I've been the lowest to the lowest. To be honest, I'll tell you something that I probably should have told you back then. I tried to commit suicide twice in my life. Depression is not a great thing, but it is a great lesson in life. As long as you always got the positive willing, that's when my auntie comes about. Always the willing to move to something brand new that you don't recognize, that you don't know, you never experienced, you never felt it, and getting out of that routine. And that's the issue with I think, maybe general public. When you're used to something, you know something, you're happy with that, and you stick to that regardless of that. That goes to diet, that goes to lifestyle, and you stick to that because that's all you know. And it's way harder to get out of that box and move into something new. So I never knew any better. So I thought anger and depression was who I was.
Yeah.
And I know any better. I thought that was my identity and this is right. But moving to England, meeting something new, different culture, different way of living, getting a proper job, getting straight. I think getting straight for 2.5 years, it really has helped me because it gave me a feeling what it feels like to be a little bit happier. So that's when I had to make a decision. I needed to change something. I needed to change it, but not physically, because I was already trying to do something physically. I start now and then going to the gym, eating a little bit better, but nothing was changing in your head. In my head was nothing changing. And now I spent years and years, and this is something I've always been really bad at doing, is talking to others about it. So one day, a person I was seeing at the time, this is between my ex-girlfriend and my wife, and I was seeing someone, and then she said, why don't you talk to a complete stranger about it? You don't have to go really deep, but just talk to someone. That might help you. So at the time, I had like a skin rash, and I went to the GP. And I showed the rash and I started looking, whatever, and I started crying. Because in my mind, I was trying to talk to myself. I said, come on, just say something close to what you want to say. And the doctor turns to me, he was looking at the computer, turns to me, he was like, why are you crying? It's only a rash. I said to him, only if the worst things in life was the rash. And he was like, you got something to say? And I just start talking. I didn't even say much. I had like a 5-minute conversation, but those 5 minutes was saving or bringing 10 years of life back. And I was like, I came out of that consultation like I've took a ton out of my shoulders. I felt way happier now. And I started thinking about it. I was like, hold on, I can do this. There's a way there. I need to carry on in this path. So I've always tried to, I'm still doing the drugs at that time, but I felt like in that day that I've taken a step up.
Yeah.
I was moving to something positive, towards a light.
Just from talking about it.
Yeah, just even to a complete stranger. I didn't even said anything that we talked about today. It was something very simple. Something didn't get much emotional, like deep emotions. It was just something that I never talked to anyone, any stranger, sorry. But that it changed a lot.
Did you just feel freedom when you did it?
It's like someone took the chains out of you.
Yeah.
It felt like, hold on. It's like you've been in a bin bag, and the bin bag went waist down, and you can now see where you're going.
Yeah.
It just felt, but I still had the bin bag on my waist.
Yeah,
I couldn't walk properly, if that makes sense. So I still had more to go.
Yeah.
And I carried on doing that, and I thought, okay, I'm on a good path. I was already trying to help others, and I was making difference in their lives. But I've always, when I get to the evening, when I get home alone, I think, but my life's still the same. What is it that's causing this?
So when you're on your own, this is when you're in the darkest times?
Darkest time, that's when then I would go to the drugs again.
So then you still having drugs in the evening? Every day?
Yeah. I used to at the time...
What drugs?
Wow, good question. So, very quickly, I went, obviously, like as I said earlier, I started smoking weed. Then being here, I started doing coke, I started doing speed, MDMA, pills, mushrooms, whatever, it helped me to take my brain from and aware of how my life is going, I would go for. And I did it. I didn't know any better. And you know, as you probably heard when you're a kid, and when you're young, you think it's cool. You know, you think it's cool smoking, you think it's cool doing drugs, you think you've part of something, but you never part of something. If that makes sense. So you always, because drugs have their own way of getting your brain to stop thinking of what is tormenting you, and getting you feeling, I would say, numb and distracted from reality. And that's how I perceive drugs.
And then you went to sleep every night in that way?
Yes.
And woke up the next day and had
straight to work.
Busy.
Straight to work, and that's all I did. I worked from 8 a.m. I would have a half an hour, 30 minutes to eat. I'll finish probably 11 in the evening, come back to work, home, back to that again.
So your health obviously wasn't in good place at all?
Definitely not. I could feel like my health was slipping away.
How did you meet the girl you married?
So, years going by, I moved to a restaurant in Gulmore called Slug and Letters, and I worked for that company for 5 years. And my wife, she was working a summer first year of when she finished the first year of university, she went to work for the summer at that restaurant, and somehow it clicked to me that it was something positive in that person. I didn't even spoke to the girl. The only thing I knew is that my colleagues from the kitchen saying, "Man, you've got a really good-looking woman in the office filling up the papers." And at the time, I was a kitchen manager, so I thought, I'm gonna have a look. And I went down there, and I knew as soon as right from the moment I lay my eyes on her, there was something special there that I should not let it go. And it was, She came out of a 5-year relationship, and she didn't want to get in a relationship straight away. And I thought, that's fine, it's cool. Let's take it slow. Didn't last that long. 2.5 weeks after, we officially going out. And as the months gone by, I knew that was something great about to come in my life. Someone that is from a different country, different background, different culture, everything is different. He's bringing something new to my table that I never experienced. And as
did the drugs stop when you first met her?
Instantly. Lied to you. Lying. Didn't stop instantly. Stopped temporarily because I didn't know her, so I didn't know if I should carry on doing what I was doing or should I stop So I stopped early. By the time we obviously as kids we carry on doing what we're doing, and so I only stopped really doing I slowed down doing them. Let's put it that way. But I only stopped. I think it was 2.5 years after.
So you still were using for 2.5 years?
But it was nothing like before. It was an occasion. It was
once a week?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
And did she know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did she know everything about you? Did you tell her everything?
Not straight away.
How long?
Not straight away. It took probably about 4 years.
4 years to tell her everything?
4 years. Because I felt like I still had to hold to the truth that I only found out about myself very recently. And so I was never comfortable at telling others how I truly felt, but I was always willing to listen how they felt so I could help them. This is how I always lived, is always helping others without looking anything in return. As I told you, my mum always taught me to give without hoping anything in return. So I've always helped. I never got used to talk about me. If anyone asks, how are you and stuff, I say, yeah, it's all good and stuff. But not the real stuff, not the things that is tormenting you. So I've never been good with that. So 4 years later down the line, we had a very good conversation, and we start talking, and then things slowly I start opening the closet and start letting things up for her.
How old were you when you did this?
So 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. Probably I was about 28, 29.
So you were almost 30 until you actually first spoke to someone.
Yeah. It's incredible, isn't it? That you spend your whole life thinking that's how you should be living, And then all these years down the line, you go, hold on, there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot to open and let it go. And like I said to you, it's like keeping those issues, thinking, okay, let's not think about it. Let's forget about it. Whatever you go, it's still there. It will stay there.
How did you feel after that conversation?
Man, I felt like, do you know what? Let's grip the life by the horns and ride it really hard and take charge of my own life. Because I've always felt like I was holding myself back from moving forward. So my wife, that's the woman that psychologically saved my life without intending to do. Because I've always been to sports, as we spoke earlier. So, and I spent my entire life here working as a chef and still doing what I was doing and never being truly happy what I was doing. So she helped me to guide me into following what I've always been good, the only thing I was being good at it, which is sports. So I signed up for a course.
But sports were like distractions, weren't they, for you?
Yeah.
And you got bored of them?
Yeah, because it always came natural to me.
Why is she different? Why isn't she like a sport? Why aren't you bored of her?
Because I see in her...
What has she got? That's what I want to know.
Oh, okay. She does stuff because she really wants to help. She like truly wants to help you without needing anything in return. Really tells you how things are and how could you go about it.
Do you feel like if you didn't meet her, you'd still be the person you were before?
I would think that would take a lot longer to get to where I am today.
Do you think that you two would have got there or not? Do you think she saved you?
She definitely saved me. She definitely saved me. Like, I know this is a bit a cliche, but behind any man is a strong woman.
Oh, man.
And literally she's my pillar. She saved my life. Okay, that's probably why. Okay, the way my aunt and uncle saved my life, that's how I felt. Exactly the same way. Felt like I've been saved by a guardian, and I knew that I could trust 100% in this person, that her intentions will always be to help me.
Could you trust people before?
No.
So she's the first person you've ever trusted?
I've tried, yeah,
maybe.
I would say not a full hand, but she was completing that. She completed what I thought was lost. Because obviously back home I've got good friends that I can trust, but this person I can trust in a different level.
Yeah.
Something I can open and always count on this person to bring me up when I'm down. Definitely, 100%.
Do you still have bad days now?
To be honest, yes. Of course I do. Like in anyone.
What's your medication now? Obviously you're not on any directly, but...
It's myself.
So what's your daily disciplines to try and medicate?
So I try to create a routine. Okay?
So you're very routine based?
Yeah.
Tell us your routine.
So I like to wake up early. I'm sure you do as well, I know that. So 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, depending on the clients I have. I always try to wake up way earlier to have my time. Coffee always the first thing I do.
Yeah.
It's always the thing I do. I've got my coffee. Recently I fell into these mushrooms, which is reishi and lion's mane, which is supposed to help. Lion's mane is supposed to help with your brain function, and reishi is supposed to help with your digestive system in general and blood circulation.
So what's this, like a breakfast?
Yes, that's my breakfast. So I spend my breakfast with my coffee. I have eggs at the moment with the toast, those mushrooms with my coffee, and I spend an hour and a half talking to myself, telling myself, okay, today started, now what is the steps of today to make sure that you are successful on your own happiness. And I think go through, okay.
So let's say, I always see you in the gym at R5 with clients.
Yeah.
So you get up at 4 to go through this, yeah?
Mm.
So you're there for an hour and a half having your eggs and toast and your mushrooms, and you just torture yourself for an hour and a half.
Yes.
Where's your missus? She's in bed.
She's asleep. Yeah, because she only works at 8 o'clock in the morning, so she doesn't have to be there.
Is this all? Do you have to do this every day?
I do have to do this every day.
So on the days where you don't have clients, do you get up early still when your missus is in bed?
I get up early, not as early, but I still have the same thing, routine.
And it has to be on your own.
Yeah.
So when you're on holiday with the missus, do you go off on your own to do this?
I can't do that, but I'll go quiet. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so you have your own space. Okay, cool. Yeah.
in my own head.
Yeah.
And that's what I need is me being quiet and talking to myself, because I've always got to convince myself that life isn't that bad. Look how far you've come, because that's what we get really distracted with. Is we always think, oh, so is doing well. Oh, he looks better. He looks this. He lifts this, and we get distracted how far we've come.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but most for me, what's more important, which affects your physical aspect, is your psychological aspect. If you change that thought process, your physical and your job, your career will change automatically.
Yeah.
Unconditionally.
It's all in sync, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. You can't have the thing is you can't have the physical and all this stuff without your being sorted up here.
Yeah.
So that's what I do to myself. I talk to myself and try always convince myself, okay, rule number 1, help people, look after your food, look after the friends, the people that care about you, and be able to open the people that you can trust. Open, tell them how you feel. Stop keeping to yourself. You've done that your entire life. Let's stop that now. Every day. It's depression. Obviously now I don't suffer that anymore, because I can say today I'm in control of it. I don't take any medication, anything like that. But I've got a more powerful medication that you could ever possibly take. It's willpower of moving forward in my life and be better. So that's always the thought process I've created now, is being able to tell myself, you will do better regardless of your situation now.
People need to get on that shit, don't they?
Definitely is what for me, and that's what I try to guide my clients with. It's you I'm sure you have that, of course. You get a bunch of a group of clients that come from different mental issues and physical issues and backgrounds and stuff like that, but it all comes down to one thing: is you convincing them you can do something. You convincing you can eat a little bit healthier, create a routine and come into the gym, changing job if it's a necessity, whatever it is. It always starts in your mind. If you can convince yourself, you can do it. But as coaches, we can always just give them our experience, our knowledge and support. But changing that psychological aspect of it has to be from them. We just got to guide them in the right kind of path. And that's my mission, is trying to change people for the better psychologically, so they can change their own body physically.
So this feels like it's more than just a job to you. Like, this is almost like your calling, like your purpose. Like,
Definitely, yeah.
So why didn't you do it sooner?
Because I got too distracted at how angry I was with my past.
And then your wife encouraged you to do it.
Definitely.
She's been a game changer for you, hasn't she?
She's been a lifesaver. And like I said to you, it just felt like what my auntie did for me.
Yeah.
And my uncle, obviously.